Boston Bruins head coach Jim Montgomery may or may not be on thin ice after a relatively poor start by the Boston Bruins. The question we're talking about today is, should he be?
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoke to Be. Today is Thursday, October 24th, and I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine. Free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first ticket purchase. Before we get started, a quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins, and you can find me, my hockey thoughts, dad jokes, at Ian C. McLaren. Now, as the Boston Bruins get ready to take on the Dallas Stars tonight at TD Garden, their first home game in a little bit after a 3-game Western Conference road trip, there's some question as to whether head coach Jim Montgomery is on thin ice or is on the hot seat. He's in the final year of his contract. There's no renewal that has been announced. Whether or not they're discussing it, who knows? The Bruins haven't gotten off to not the greatest start. And so is his job in jeopardy is basically the question that we are discussing today. Yay or nay, Jim Montgomery on thin ice, on the hot seat, is his job in jeopardy? Here's what we know so far about the Boston Bruins. They have put together a record of 3-1 through 7 games, an even 500 point percentage. They have a negative goal differential, and they're kind of a middle of the pack team at the moment in the Atlantic Division. We did the power rankings the other day. They're currently 4th, a -3 goal differential, which again is tied for 3rd worst in the Atlantic with the Buffalo Sabres. And there's just a real lack of offense. There's a lack of discipline. And of course, notably, there's a lack of that two-headed monster in net, where over the past 2 seasons, Montgomery's been able to rotate between Jeremy Swayman, Linus Ullmark, and get elite level production from his netminders each and every night. Swayman's off to a bit of a slow start because he missed training camp. Joonas Korpisalo comes in. He's much further down the goaltending rankings list than a guy like Linus Ullmark. There's also the fact that on Saturday night, Jim Montgomery was seen yelling at Brad Marchand on the bench after he made an egregious error that led to what was thought to be the game-tying goal. At that time, it was taken off the board because of an offside review. And he also put hands on the captain as well. You can say, don't be so soft. That was really nothing, but it was enough that it has garnered the attention of national media. It was a topic of conversation on the 32 Thoughts podcast last week, for instance. Speaking of 32 Thoughts, Elliot Friedman dropped his latest written column last night and did mention the Bruins in there and how he believes Boston playing the Panthers twice early on kind of set them off trajectory, and their focus became evening the score with Florida as opposed to sticking to what they are good at and trying to get off to a strong start. You can make of that what you will. Obviously, part of it is the fact that the Bruins do not have as easy of a schedule as they have had over the past couple of years. And that's a problem for the Bruins. They've had 2 games against the defending Stanley Cup champions. They've had to go to Colorado, Nashville, Utah. It's been a tough start to the season, whereas last year they played Anaheim a couple of times, the Sharks a couple of times. Friedman wrote he watches a lot of Boston. Shout out to Sofia Jurkovic. Hope to see you back on air soon. We all agree with that. The eye test isn't pretty. The underlying numbers are unusually poor. I would say that's true, although Boston's underlying numbers were not very strong last year. He said his theory is the Bruins' 2 games with Florida messed them up. The playoffs are for taking numbers and dealing with things next season. The Bruins desired that. It was a pointed top of discussion, but the Panthers beat them twice while not allowing Boston to gain any satisfying measure of physical payback. There's been a lot early. Jeremy Swayman's lengthy contract stalemate. Jim Montgomery going hard at Captain Brad Marchand on the bench in Utah. The yelling didn't bother him as long as it was a rare occurrence. More worried if it happened often. That's a sign of things coming unglued. A couple sources pointed out they didn't like coaches who only make an example of young players or fourth liners, and Montgomery isn't afraid to criticize his stars. Friedman added the tap to Marchand was the only thing that concerned him, but didn't cross the line and surely won't happen again. The Bruins don't look like themselves, but repeatedly make everybody look like fools for anticipating their demise. It's a high IQ team that isn't itself right now and needs a restart. Again, those Florida games really threw them and reminded us all that the Panthers are still a force. It's all pointing to the fact that perhaps Jim Montgomery has lost the room. Perhaps he has not done a good enough job of getting them to focus on the details, the little things, simplifying their game, not worrying about who they're playing, but sticking to their game. Maybe he's lost the captain, or there's some simmering resentment there. Obviously, Marchand's coming off 3 surgeries. He's 36 years old. What are the realistic expectations for him offensively? There are certain expectations of him as a leader of this team. You look at the fact that Jim Montgomery's system perhaps does not work in today's NHL. That's one thing that I look at specifically. He focuses on high danger chances as opposed to shot volume. They're not getting those right now, especially from their best players. So whether it's a motivation issue or they just need to be told to just shoot the puck and stop trying to be pretty with it, stop trying to get into those high danger areas, just shoot the puck, see what happens, get to the net, get some rebounds, etc. Do the dirty things that need to happen. Another criticism of Montgomery, of course, is his excessive line shuffling. He was guilty of that in the series against the Panthers in 2023. He's been guilty of that early on this season. It's difficult to get some chemistry going when you're constantly shuffling your top 6, top 9. The fourth line, of course, has been secure. So there are valid criticisms to be made of Jim Montgomery. Has he lost the room? Has he lost the ability to trust his lineup decisions? Is he just not that great of a coach tactically? The power play struggles. They're not generating offensive chances. Perhaps they need someone more offensively minded to come in and right the ship. Those are all arguments for Jim Montgomery being on thin ice. But is it possible it's just too early to make that determination and they just need some more time to figure things out? That could be also true, and we'll discuss that here as the podcast continues. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook, and they're giving you an opportunity to get in on the action in a big way. Right now, if you put down a $5 bet, your first $5 bet, they will give you $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. All you have to do is visit fanduel.com, check out the over-under for tonight's Bruins Stars game, which is set at 5.5. Put $5 down, and you will get $200 in bonus bets, regardless of whether or not that bet hits. If you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. It's all available at fanduel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. So there are some valid arguments for Jim Montgomery being on thin ice. I don't think it's time for him to be let go, but there are some reasons to believe there's some cracks there in the armor. Now, let's talk about the Nay situation. First of all, as I noted yesterday on X, a general manager only gets so many coaching hires before it starts to reflect on him that things are not working. I believe there was an Athletic article or a New York Times article from 2019 that said on average they get about 2.2 coaching hires. So you look at Don Sweeney since coming aboard, he replaced Claude Julien with Bruce Cassidy. He replaced Bruce Cassidy with Jim Montgomery. And now say he were to replace Montgomery with, I don't know, Jay Leach from Providence. Jay Leach from internally, or Ryan Mugano from Providence. That's your third that you have executed there. At some point, the inability to win has to reflect on the management as well. And I referenced this yesterday. You can only cook with the ingredients that you're given. I'm a marketer by day. And if you aren't given the tools that you need to present the best possible product, then it's going to be difficult to perform. And even if you remove the possibility of adding from outside, you can make an argument that the Bruins aren't putting the best possible product on the ice with the tools that they have available. You have some guys down in the AHL who could possibly come in and produce better than some of the guys currently at the NHL level. And you also have Tyler Johnson waiting in the wings. You have $3 million in cap space allocated to Joonas Korpisalo, who you want to play as infrequently as possible. You don't have a ton of value contracts on the blue line. You know, you added Andrew Peeke for a while. A bunch of these guys are signed for quite some time. You allocated cap space to upgrading at center and Elias Lindholm and Nikita Zadorov on the blue line. Zadorov's taking a minor penalty per game, $5 million for the next several seasons. When you lost a Jake DeBrusk, a Danton Heinen, a James Van Riemsdyk, valuable wingers who put the puck in the net last season, and you were not able to replace them. You have Max Jones on the left side. You have Morgan Geekie playing big minutes when he probably shouldn't be. These are all areas, I'm sure, of frustration for Jim Montgomery because he doesn't have the tools. Obviously, you look back to a couple years ago, and it was an embarrassment of riches, and he was able to lead the team to a record-setting season. You could argue that anybody could do that, but the reality is he was the one who did it. You don't have that two-headed goaltending monster in net that you can deploy game in and game out. And if you have poor underlying numbers and you're constantly being outshot by the opposition, that's going to come back and bite you on those nights when Swayman's not at his best or Korpisalo's in net because he's just not at the same level. So that is something to consider as well. So there's two ways to look at it. You can either say that Don Sweeney has given Jim Montgomery everything he needs in order to succeed with this club. Or you can say Jim Montgomery's trying to do his best with what he's been given. And it's kind of unfortunate because if you look back at the record-setting season for the Boston Bruins, again, the best regular season in NHL history, but Jim Montgomery's lack of playoff experience really hindered the team, and he got caught in the matchup games and shifting the lines around. Yes, there were some injuries to contend with, but still, it's a situation where perhaps a more experienced head coach or someone who had been there before, like a Bruce Cassidy, could have led this team deeper into the playoffs. So it's kind of unfortunate timing there. Did he learn, and did the team improve? Last year, yes, they were able to make it to the second round, but they were outmatched and outclassed by a Florida Panthers team that is just better. And that same Florida Panthers team, unfortunately, the Bruins had to play them twice already this season, and they were outmatched and outclassed once again, and perhaps didn't have their heads in the right spot. Now you have the situation where the Bruins are seemingly built more for the playoffs. That was the goal. That was the idea behind adding a Zadorov, Lindholm, bringing in Kostelic, bigger bodies like Jones, etc. And there's so many new faces that it takes time for everybody to gel, find chemistry, especially if the lines aren't working and you're trying to mix them up. That consistency is going to help early on in the season. So yes, there are some personnel issues that need to be resolved. They need an injection, a spark, whether it be Tyler Johnson or Fabian Lysell. But they also need time to get acclimated to the new system, new city, new teammates, new style of play, etc., and to the expectations of what comes to be a Boston Bruin in this city. This team is built more for trying to match up with, the road in the playoffs will go through Florida once again. So the question is, will they be able to get to the playoffs? I still think they're a playoff team, and it's just going to take some time. Yes, there's very valid reasons for criticizing Jim Montgomery, his deployment, his line combinations. But at the same time, is this the best possible version of the Boston Bruins? There's cap restraints, but those are kind of Sweeney's own doing by taking back Eunice Korpisalo, for example. That's $3 million. You could have added Tyler Johnson already and somebody else. Or why did you prioritize Jones and Tufte on free agency day when a guy like Tyler Johnson was out there? Maybe Johnson was waiting for a better deal, but you didn't have to rush to sign those two guys on July 1st. If you missed out on them, okay, there's other options out there, obviously. So, yay or nay, Jim Montgomery being on thin ice, there are some questions to be asked, to be sure, but at the same time, it's still too early. You look at Bruce Cassidy, he was given 399 regular season games, 73 playoff games, I should say. His record in the playoffs was 36-37. Jim Montgomery is currently 9-11, lower point percentage in the playoffs. But he's had more regular season success than Cassidy, point percentage wise. 171 games, 115 wins, 35 losses, 21 overtime losses, 734 point percentage. So, and that's the third highest right now among Bruins coaches, dating back to the 70s, where Tom Johnson and Ben Gittlein had higher point percentages in 100 to 200 games. So if this drags out, and the Bruins find themselves outside of the playoff picture, Thanksgiving, Christmas even, perhaps, because if this team is built for the playoffs, they need to get there in order to show that. But there's also some personnel things that need to be dealt with as well. And that, quite frankly, is on Don Sweeney, who, as good as his track record has been in terms of trades, signings, even his draft record isn't as bad as some people make it out to be. There's some real questions about the makeup of this team at present, what they prioritized in the offseason, and especially the return in the Allmark trade. Now, up next is the game against the Dallas Stars, and we'll preview that here as the podcast continues. Game Time is the ticketing app that I use when I am looking to go to my next sports event, concert, comedy show, and they have a fantastic new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I love the panoramic view from your seat so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive at the venue. And with Game Time, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take all the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. By turning on the all-in pricing feature, you will be met with no surprise fees at checkout. Again, just download the app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first ticket purchase. Terms do apply. But Game Time is where you want to be to get the best tickets for your next live event. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best way to get action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. And they invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect and double your money even if your picks don't hit. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app, use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. The Boston Bruins are back home tonight to take on the Dallas Stars. It's a team that is 5-2 to begin the season and with very real Stanley Cup aspirations. Of course, our old friend Tyler Seguin will be in town, and the Bruins will be looking to shake off this 2-game losing streak against a pretty tough team. If you look at the Stars, again, they are expected to be near the top of the Western Conference when it's all said and done. They've been on the cusp for a couple years after getting to the final in the bubble against the Dallas Stars. Jake Ottinger just signed a contract extension equal to Jeremy Swayman. He's got a .936 save percentage so far, 4-1. Jeremy Swayman's 2-2-1 with a .911 save percentage. The Stars are coming off a loss to the Buffalo Sabres. Prior to that, they beat the Edmonton Oilers, but lost to the Washington Capitals. So kind of a mixed bag over the last few games. The Bruins, of course, beat Colorado, then lost in overtime to Utah, and then to Nashville. Over the past 5 games, the Stars are led in scoring by Roope Hintz. He's got 5 points. Matt Duchene's got 2 goals. Logan Stankoven with 4 assists. The Bruins' leading scorer over their past 5 games, Mason Lohrei. He's got 4 points. and David Pastrnak 2 goals, Brad Marchand 3 assists. The Stars are led in scoring by Hintz and Stankoven. Stankoven's looking for his first goal of the season, but he's got 7 assists. Roope Hintz has 3 goals, 4 assists. They're always dangerous, of course, with Jason Robertson, Wyatt Johnson, Seguin, Ben, even Mason Marshman, Matt Duchene. This is a very deep team up front, and they've got some weapons on the back end as well, although Miro Heiskanen still looking for his first point of the season. In fact, looking at the Stars, they only have 3 points from the blue line, and they're all from Thomas Hartley, which is kind of odd. Anyways, the Bruins led in scoring, of course, by Cole Koepke, 3 goals, 3 assists. Johnny Beecher with 5 points. Lindholm, Kostelic, Pastrnak, all of 5 points as well. Morgan Geekie still looking for his first point. Trent Frederick only has 1 goal. Charlie Coyle has 1 goal. Those 3 guys really need to get it going, as well as Marchand, who has yet to score. In terms of the numbers, the Stars are the 3rd best defensive team so far this season, only allowing 1.86 goals per game, which could be a problem for an offensively challenged Bruins team. They're only scoring 2.71 goals per game, however, which is 22nd in the NHL. The Bruins actually have a better average, 3 goals per game, but it's only 19th. Dallas's penalty kill is ranked first at 95.5. Their power play, however, is struggling a bit. They're only ranked 29th with a 9.5% success rate. Boston's 24th on the power play, 13.8%. 8th ranked penalty kill, 82.9%. And the Bruins, 10th in faceoffs. That's an area of improvement this year. Dallas is only at 22nd with 48% success rate. It's always fun and interesting when the Bruins take on the Stars. It's a 7 p.m. start in Boston. I would expect it'll be Swayman taking on Ottinger in what is a matchup of 2 of the best young goalies in the NHL, 2 of the best goalies, period. So that could be the difference there. And hopefully Swayman comes in with another elite performance while the Bruins are able to crack through here offensively. That is definitely what we are looking for. Please do subscribe on YouTube and on your favorite podcast app. Check out the Locked On NHL Fantasy podcast next, where Steele and Flip will give you everything you need to get the leg up in your fantasy league. And please do take care of yourselves, take care of each other. Enjoy the game tonight. Hopefully we're back here tomorrow discussing a win with all the storylines, stats, and signals that you need from this game against the Stars. If anything Bruins related breaks, I will jump on the YouTube channel and do a quick immediate reaction there. So you want to make sure you are subscribed on Locked On Boston Bruins everywhere this podcast is available. Take care, friends.